Hello everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thank you guys for joining me. I'll be your astrologer today. Happy Tuesday. I hope you guys are doing well. I've got a little video for you guys today that's a little bit of a preview of the energies that are going to be building from late January to February 2026. This is all about the Aquarius Stellium that we're going to be seeing over the next couple of weeks. And the rare revolution is here. Now, you guys are watching this probably on January 13th, and I am just kind of doing a encapsulating video of all the other things that I'm going to be kind of breaking down over my content schedule for the next 2 weeks. But this Aquarius Stellium is brewing. So currently you guys are watching with all the planets in Capricorn. This is kind of the build up to this. And it's going to be really taking place for the next several weeks. So I can't pinpoint one specific date, but we're gonna go through a number of them. And obviously we know that Aquarius is all about the revolution. It's all about the future. It's about power to the people. And this is really going to be a video explaining to you guys why Aquarius season is going to hit so differently. So if you guys like this content, you wanna see more of it, make sure you subscribe to the channel, click the bell button below so you get alerts. And definitely make sure you give me a thumbs up, share this video, and drop your rising sign. Let me know what you guys are experiencing with the changes over the next month or so. Now, obviously, the stellium is building, so nothing is actually in Aquarius right now. This is kind of the quiet moments before we start to see the breakthroughs as planets enter into Aquarius. Now, obviously, this is a fixed Earth sign, the 11th sign of the Zodiac, traditionally ruled by Saturn, which is all about responsibility, restriction, limitations, and karmic reckoning. And the modern day ruler is Uranus, which deals with freedom, breaking things apart, kind of separation, forward thinking, and focusing on the future. Now, I love astrology in action. That's why I wanted to get this video out early to start talking to you guys about some of the stuff we're going to see. And it's going to be really building from January 17th, really all the way through the 23rd of January. So that's going to be when you're going to see some peak conjunctions that are happening with Pluto. But it's really going to play out all the way through Aquarius season. So it's going to bleed all the way into February of 2026, where we will then see Saturn and Neptune back in Aries. We will also see the Saturn-Neptune conjunction. Now, what is a stellium, right? A stellium, I kind of like the concept of we have a cake. And in order to have a cake, you have to mix in all of these various ingredients, right? You have your baking soda, you have your flour, you have your sugar, maybe you guys have your cocoa, your eggs, your oil, and you have to mix it all together. And when you mix all of that together and then you pop it in the oven and it's put in pressure with this conjunction, right? It develops into this new form. It is like this super delicious thing that we can eat. That's a stellium. So you're going to see a super focused, heavy, influential energy in the Aquarius area of your chart. So pull out your chart. This is where it kind of pays to be prepared. Look at that particular house. This is the house where you are going to see this kind of mini revolution that's going to be brewing for you over the next couple of weeks. And this will be an exact 5-planet pileup that's going to be happening in Aquarius. It's not unusual to see the Sun and Mercury and Venus moving through the same sign. But Mars is going to be there, Pluto is going to be there, kind of the gatekeeper as these planets enter into Aquarius. I cannot stress this enough. This is incredibly rare. And to be honest with you guys, this was not on my content schedule sheet. But curiosity kind of killed the cat with me on this one probably. And the more that I was looking at this really rare conjunction of planets, I was like, wait a second, this has happened in recent years. We saw this back in 2024, and I'll review some of that. But I was like, when else has this happened in the past? Because we know Pluto cycles are 240 something or 50 something years. We have not seen Pluto in Aquarius until recently, pretty much since the birth of the United States and the Constitution and obviously the Revolutionary War. So I was like, let me go and do some astrological investigation, and it kind of created this video. So I hope you guys like it. It's like I said, it's only happened a handful of times in recent years. The one time that's going to be most recent was in Aquarius season in 2024. But then we go back and we look at what's happened in recorded history and what intense situations kind of manifested from the stellium in Aquarius with Pluto being there. Well, we saw almost near matches kind of happening in February of 1787 And we also saw it happening in 1791. That was the last time that we saw the same planets that were kind of moving through this sign in Aquarius. But obviously, like I said, most recently we saw it in mid-February of 2024. And I think that was a little bit of a preview of what is to come over the next several weeks. Now, if we go back in time and we think about what was happening in February 2024, let's take a look. Let's see. I'll show you guys the chart so you can see in real time. But in this year, this is when we saw all of the planets that were moving through here. Oops, sorry, I went back a little too far. There we go. We look at February of 2024, and the Sun and Pluto were in Aquarius. Mercury came into Aquarius. Mars came into Aquarius. Venus came into Aquarius. Just barely, but they were all still there, okay? So obviously, you know, we see Mars go through Aquarius roughly every 2 years. So finding a sequence where we have Mars and Venus and also Pluto is very intense. It's very unusual. We think back to what was happening in 2024 with this stellium, which was really kind of actually peaking February 16th, February 17th into February 18th, and then the sun went into Pisces. Now, Saturn was in Pisces, Neptune was in Pisces, which is very similar to this cycle, although Saturn and Neptune are just about finished. And if we look at what was happening in February of 2024, it ignited a massive tech and financial surge. Okay, so if you guys go and do your research, you'll see that NVIDIA briefly became like the third most valuable company there is. We saw that month Bitcoin jumped 45.9%. And we saw global stocks hit record highs on some major topics in technology and also AI. I think a lot of those things were actually really hyped. We do see like focus on tech and connection and anything that deals with science and innovation and space when we look at Aquarius placements. And that very same month, we also saw that Apple launched its Vision Pro. Now, central banks made big moves in February. We saw China cut rates massively. We also saw the Fed that was kind of battling against this new administration that was kind of coming in, and there was a lot of intensity revolving around economic reform and whether or not there was going to be some changes going on with interest rates. And they held steady. They were kind of refusing to, you know, kind of compromise. And that's been a back and forth thing that we've seen this administration over the last year or so. Politically, there was a lot of turmoil. We saw that there was definitely a lot of resistance to the change that was going on with the incoming new presidency with President Trump, and also a lot of drama that was kind of erupting within both political parties. We saw a lot of people who are also like protesting and were really kind of against some of the more, I think, kind of future moving changes that were going to be happening within government. We saw leadership shakeups that were happening across the board globally. And it was really highlighting the one reoccurring theme that I have kind of found throughout the two cycles that I'm going to compare for you guys today was a real emphasis towards decentralization. Whether that was media, where obviously Mercury is there, if it was anything that dealt with politics, anything that connected to money and banking, because of that correlation and connection with Saturn being retrograde eventually, in Pisces, where it was reevaluating our kind of responsibility or our connection, at least here in the United States, to the global economy, and like US kind of having the dollar as the world reserve. So it's also playing off of Uranus, and something that you saw during this cycle, and you will see this again in 2026, is a lot of planets that were coming into a square with Uranus and Taurus. Now Jupiter was there, so it made everything feel bigger. So there was lots of talk about inflation. There was lots of talk about also environmental kind of concerns. And how that impacted energy sectors, how that impacted, how we were spending money, what we were buying. We saw a lot of kind of companies getting canceled for their political views. We also saw a huge emphasis in really focusing on renewable energy. So Pluto deals with that, it's more nuclear. Uranus is going to deal more with like gas. It's also going to have connections to solar or anything revolving around stuff that's kind of like renewable and environmentally friendly. So this kind of set up as like a clash where big business, potentially politics, even tech, were going up against, old systems basically in banking, and they were pushing for freedom. They were also pushing for people to kind of have a choice or have a say in how they were spending, what they were buying, what they were consuming. So globally, this massive stellium, it really, what it kind of entails is kind of talking about some of the things that came up under pressure in 2024 that needed to be dealt with. Certainly growing issues with, you know, the federal debt, also growing issues in regards to expansion when it comes to energy and development, land development, environmental stuff. And I think that this was the precursor, or like the warm-up act, setting the stage for 2026 when we start to see this stuff come in over the next couple of weeks. And it's going to be much, much more intense. Now, if we look at what's going to be happening in end of January going into February of this year, just to give you guys a little sneak peek, you will see all of these planets in Aquarius. Like I said, it's going to be kind of setting up here. So it's going to be pretty much late January into early February. So from the second that Mars is in Aquarius, you're looking at about January 23rd until Mercury and Venus go into Pisces, which is going to be about February 10th. Okay, that's going to be like the peak window. And will things happen? Most likely. But as I looked at some of the cycles in the past, I realized that there was like this growing pressure for there to be some kind of platonic purge or some kind of transformation or transfer of power or regeneration of power or control. After some of those conjunctions in the stellium, massive change came afterwards. So some of us are starting to feel this heating up now. I think globally, when I look at this stellium that's going to be happening in Aquarius, it really kind of signals that there's about to be a massive collective upheaval that's going to be taking place over the next month. And it's really about innovation. I think that's the positive. It also does seem to kind of foretell that there is about to be some kind of financial reset that's going to be coming in. A real heavy focus on decentralized power. Obviously, we might see some major crypto and tech booms. Definitely a lot of tech-driven change, environmental reforms, space travel, food system disruptions, and obviously what Aquarius does best, rebellion against old structures. So if you've been following in January of 2026, so you've been seeing this massive stellium in Capricorn where there's just been a lot of focus on really kind of consolidating power, old structures, old regimes, old leadership, are really trying to kind of hold on to everything they have. It's been like the last gasp of power and control. And that's also happened over the last year and a half as we've seen Pluto go in and out of Capricorn and now finally staying in Aquarius. So what are we seeing out in the world? Just what are the headlines? Whether or not these are things you believe in or not, a lot of the stuff that's kind of hitting both independent and mainstream news is echoing some of the themes of what this stellium actually represents. Now you can hear about it in your social circles, you can see it on your social medias, you can also see this kind of briefly kind of coming up in the news, but we're going to see more of it, I think, become unveiled because there's going to be a lot of push from the collective to have exposure. Remember, everything needs to hit Pluto, so it's definitely going to deal with crime, corruption, political scandals, sex scandals, anything that is going to represent abuses of power. And it's all getting kind of this reverberation off of Uranus and Taurus, the ruler, the modern day ruler. So it is about financial instability. It is going to be about what's going on also with the banks, the bond markets, anything that's connected to land ownership, farming. And what are some of the big things that we're kind of seeing, on the internet right now? We're seeing tax fraud scandals, that is across the board, and mishandling of tax resources that citizens are paying towards. And we're starting to see all of this kind of blow up of stories of where there is this misuse of funds, I think, for just tax dollars, and people kind of being in an uproar and trying to actually make sense of what is happening and like why are some of these systems becoming corrupted, and what is breaking down, and also what groups are influencing or kind of impacting this. Now this could be NGOs, this could be political people, this could also be big tech companies. And we're also hearing a lot of people on the internet, this has been going on for a couple of months, but it's going to get louder, who are calling to end the Fed. Now, what's very interesting is that Aquarius represents groups or panels. It can also represent the internet, audiences in general. So we're seeing platforms like Rumble and X that are now integrating crypto and Bitcoin payments for content creators. Now, we have not seen the full rollout of the crypto stuff yet on X, so we don't know exactly what it's going to be, but Rumble is now allowing you to tip your creators in Bitcoin or in crypto payments. There's also a huge push for power back to the people with these particular stelliums. So it's pretty common to see people in the streets. There's going to be a lot of like revolutionary kind of energies coming up. You're going to see a lot of extremism in people's political and kind of environmental beliefs. And obviously, Mars and Pluto are some kind of bad boys in astrology, which do represent political violence. And anything that deals with, stuff that can be connected to self-defense, weapons, even war. Now, there is this reoccurring pattern. So obviously, like, history right now is really rhyming very loud. And so while we kind of break down each individual ingress throughout the next couple of weeks, as the Sun, Mars, Mercury, and Venus are moving into Aquarius, you'll see those videos. I'll be putting them out on my channel, and it'll be able to kind of explain each individual one. I take you through the transits and kind of explain it. But I thought it was important to get ahead of this and kind of get into the future and really encapsulate what all these planets mean together in this particular sign, what I expect, and also what we've seen in the past. So in order for me to kind of do this in a more accurate fashion, I had to go back and look at what has happened under some of these similar kind of stellium patterns. Now, obviously, this is more of like a niche video. I'm not going to like bore you guys to death with like a history lesson, but there is a lot of historical kind of connections to what has happened with a similar stellium in Aquarius that happened hundreds of years ago. Like I said, it's a lot of it's like my natural curiosity for these past patterns and also those cycles. So make sure you guys are subscribed so you can get the full weekly videos on all the Aquarius transits. Also, check out your January 2026 horoscopes for more insights on how this is going to impact you personally. And if you guys stay tuned till the end of the video, I'm going to take you through the 12 rising signs, and I'm going to talk about your personal revolution brewing in the Aquarius energy and area of your chart. Now, let's talk a little bit more about the historical blueprint, because like I said, there was very similar stelliums that were happening, and this was kind of between 1787 and 1791. That was like the window that I kind of had, but there was a real emphasis on 1791. That was the closest stellium that I could find. There you go. To this same period. So you see Sun, Mercury, Pluto, Venus, and Mars all in Aquarius. And then it looks like actually right at the beginning of the month, we then had a new moon that was in Aquarius. So right around the beginning of February of 1791. But in 1787, 1789, roughly every 2 years, we also saw similar planets that kind of moved through there, but not as exact as this one. So I went back, I did some research, and I was like, all right, what was going on during these key periods when we had similar stelliums? What I came upon was in 1787, it was something called Shays' Rebellion. And this is where like farmers were essentially being crushed by taxes, right? So this was like 10 years after the US, gained its independence and kind of ended the Revolutionary War. But not a lot of people realize that even though we had the Declaration of Independence, we had the freedom, we were starting to kind of figure things out, we had to really rebuild from the ground up. There was a lot of structures and things that had to kind of be put together. So there was a lot of tax implementation that was going on that was really kind of impacting farmers or anything that dealt with eventually people who went into like whiskey and alcohol distilling. And there was a lot of debt. So a lot of the debt kind of rose up, and it was directly through the people forcing the Constitutional Convention. So then 2 years later, after we saw all of that pressure where there was like this focus on, okay, well, how are people experiencing some kind of crisis with resources? Where is power being abused? In 1789, we saw the Constitution that then became activated. So this means that they were actually starting the process of forming the government. This new federal government began, and our very first American president, Washington, was elected. So it was really kind of shaping how we were going to have these organized political kind of like parties and like bodies that was going to be basically making up, the federal government. So if we go into then 1789, there we go, oops. So it was 1787, sorry, I'm kind of all over the place. 1787 was when we saw the first wave, there we go. And there was quite a few planets that were moving into Aquarius. Mars was just barely there. but Venus wasn't there. Okay, so this is what kind of formed, this rebellion that was going on with the farmers. Makes perfect sense because it was squaring Jupiter. So that was also echoing, I think, some of the things that were going on in 2024, where we saw a huge emphasis on like environmental concerns, farming concerns, government restrictions, limitations on agriculture, also massive movements of people becoming self-sufficient, focusing on home gardening or homesteading. And it was kind of like this clash between what was becoming new and kind of like institutionalized versus the more traditional conservative ways of doing things. So it was like very, very extreme, very liberal is something that I would say that was kind of coming in through this square. So it was really pushing people both in their pocketbooks, right, Jupiter and Taurus, but also with their values, and it created like this uproar. So then in 1789, we'll go ahead 2 years, then we started to see the next stellium that was forming, and that was going to be the same planets, except Mercury was not quite there. So let's go back. And this is when we saw the Constitution that was being activated, and basically the federal government was being formed, okay? Also interesting, Venus wasn't quite there yet, but Saturn was in Pisces, and Saturn is the traditional ruler of Aquarius. So it's kind of this realization that's like, all right, well, now it's the dissolving of the old ways, and we're kind of moving away from things that are not entirely clear or not totally formed or kind of like realized. And so that also is kind of echoing some of the things that are going on right now that we have been experiencing both in 2024 when Saturn was in Pisces, now in 2026 as Saturn and Neptune are exiting Pisces. But the big year was 1791. So in that year, this is when I saw a lot of really interesting coincidences that are extremely similar to what we're seeing now. Probably the biggest thing that catches my eye is the fact that we also had Saturn that was in the very early degrees of Aries. So unlike when we saw in 1789 and 87, when Saturn was hanging out in Pisces and there was a lot of confusion and not really knowing who was in control or how things were going to be formed, we started really seeing action, right? A lot less talk, more action in 1791. Now this is interesting because this was like the pivotal year. This is the closest you're going to see in terms of the stellium that's going to be coming up in 2026 this year, because we're going to have Saturn that's also going to be in Aries. So we saw the whiskey tax that happened that year. Basically, this was the very first federal tax on any domestic product, okay? I'm not talking about what happened with the tea tax and the Boston Tea Party, because all that stuff was happening before the United States became independent. Once we had the first tax on domestic products, it was whiskey, and it was pretty much placed on distillers, which lived in like rural areas. So it really hit them the hardest, and it also was hitting them to fund the debts that came from the war. And it was really trying to kind of, I think, take resources from some of the most hardworking, independent, sovereign kind of people. And we also saw in February of 1791, so let me go to this date, it was around February 25th, after all these conjunctions happened, that then we had the very first centralized bank that actually kind of took place in the United States. So on February the 25th, 1791, obviously, Hamilton centralized the privately influenced bank, and he assumed state debts. He also issued currency, so we started like dollars and like all currency that could be traded. And he created the national mint. He relied on taxes as well as tariffs for revenue in order to be able to produce that. Okay. Down the road, we saw a lot of conflict over this, and actually Jefferson was very much against it. He came out against him. They were kind of like rivals. He called it unconstitutional, and he said that it was corruption that really favored elites over citizens. Huge theme when you see Pluto and Aquarius. You see this huge pushback where it's like, wait a second, there's going to be too much power, too much control, especially when it comes to wealth and resources that's being taken away from the people. So when this happened, obviously it was after we were seeing these massive conjunctions that were happening in Aquarius, which could symbolize that there was some kind of meetings of the minds and decisions that were being made, or there were potentially panels or groups of people coming together trying to protect their own interests. Very interesting. I feel like, you know, down the road, if you look at what has happened since this period of time, Hamilton more or less kind of laid out the system or the groundwork for what would be America's economic strength and also policies. But also 200 years later, it would go on to then expand federal taxes. So things like income tax, payroll, deficits, all of that stuff, leaving many feeling like they're drowning in taxes. And currently we're sitting at around $35 trillion plus in national debt, while power is shifting from the people to institutions, right? Corrupt institutions, merger between tech and government, long-standing relationships that certain politicians have had with other companies, other countries, and lining their own pockets. The irony, right? Because if you guys may or may not know that, but on the $10 bill in America, Hamilton's face is on the front of it. So it's just kind of weird that the very currency that his centralized vision kind of created is now under fire. Now, in 1836, President Andrew Jackson eventually went on to veto and kill off the idea for renewing the bank. It was going to be the second bank of the United States. He was like, nope, not happening under my watch. He did not want the central banks that were really kind of concentrated in Europe to influence what was going on in the United States and have power over our currency. From 1836 to 1913, we had no central bank in the United States of America. We were starting to see major economic boom that was kind of taking place, a lot of independence and freedom when it comes to really people building their own businesses. This is why America was seen as something that was an opportune place for anybody to go and kind of get their start. However, the very year that we stopped having a central bank, right, no influence coming from outside banking structures outside of the United States, Woodrow Wilson in December of 1913 brought forth the Federal Reserve. And this was in direct response to a lot of economic instability that was kind of going on since 1907's kind of panic that we had, and felt that it was necessary in order to ensure that the public was kind of covered with, finances, that there was going to be, stability economically. And since then, we have seen a lot of things taking place, like an increase with taxes. Obviously, we've also seen since the 70s, we've gone off the gold standard, and inflation has continued to kind of rise. So what have we had since the kind of seeding of this moment, where it was really kind of taking away power of resources from the people, putting it in direct kind of, control of certain kind of elitists that were managing the country and involved in politics, and then in turn, turning it over to what would actually be the, Federal Reserve, which is a separate entity of the United States. So we've had high taxes, we've had taxes that are going towards war, we have had major, moving in and kind of, takeovers of countries around the world. We've seen massive corruption and the dissolving of people having financial power, but more importantly, manipulation of resources, manipulation of currency, which has led to inflation, which is also basically more or less a hidden tax. So prices are going up, things are costing more. We may not see prices in tax-wise going up quite so much. You're gonna hear a lot of politicians talking about there's gonna be cuts and stuff that are gonna be happening with taxes, but we all know that's not really helping the little people who have to pay the bills. So there's been this ongoing devaluation of the dollar, which is the US, kind of currency and the world reserve currency. So I started looking at this and my eyes got really big and I was like, oh my God, something really big is coming. So perhaps my thought is now, if we move forward to what's happening in 2026, perhaps maybe the cycle is now ending. And sometimes when we see oppositions or we see squares to the original transits that actually transpired and took place, it can materialize as things breaking apart or resetting, or like the very systems that they created now imploding and being called on to reassess and reevaluate whether or not they really get carried into the future. Now, when I was looking at like the 1790s, especially when this stuff started hitting and kind of like coming into, conjunctions then, it was all actually opposing Uranus in Leo. which is very interesting because we're going to see nodal aspects going on. We're going to see the North Node going into Aquarius, the South Node going into Leo, Jupiter going into Leo, and eclipses that are going to light up our skies, really touching on some of these very historical cycles that go back several hundred years. Now, what does it mean when that happened? Well, basically, the period that I'm looking at, these conjunctions opposing Uranus in Leo, AKA were like the people opposing a king or a leader. It was also seen back then that if you did anything that was more revolutionary, breaking away from, one structured leader or some kind of, monarchy rule, that you were seen as like a star, right? You were seen as somebody who is like a warrior or a hero, very heroic, I guess I would say, with some of those oppositions to Uranus in Leo. And because people were focusing on banding together and talking about freedom and resisting some of the old kind of experiences that they had under the King of England, the states were then super focused on kind of organizing these new bodies of government and becoming sovereign, figuring out how to not only be self-governing, but also kind of order and bring together a form of the United States post-Revolutionary War. So more or less, they were kind of in like uncharted territory, like politically speaking. Now, we are going to see that, like I said, later this year, the South Node will be moving into Leo, and then we will see right here, it'll be over the summer, and then the North Node is going to be moving into Aquarius. This is all going to be further kind of magnified once we see the eclipse that's going to be coming in February, also in Aquarius, which is a North Node eclipse. It's picking up the energy of the incoming North Node, which will be there kind of like July and August of this year. Oh my goodness. So I feel like when that happens, especially later in the summer, when we see Jupiter go into Leo and Chiron go into Taurus, right around here, end of June, July, August, this means that there is about to be a huge financial reset coming. The reset is coming. It's going to be very big, especially with Chiron and Taurus, because this is going to represent some major kind of crisis or liquidity crisis or issues with banks, major resetting of power, especially when it comes to Leo things, right? Gambling, the stock market, anything that's going to also be dealing with speculative markets, and things kind of being a big boom or a big bust as it opposes Pluto in Aquarius. Now, I have looked at some of the cycles. Honestly, I think that this is a combination of what we have seen both in the 2000 kind of dot-com era, where there was this big hype around the internet and then a bunch of stuff kind of fell flat and we saw things collapse. And also in 2008, when we saw the North Node that was moving through Aquarius, and in 2009, when we saw also major economic, issues and banking failures and issues with regarding a bunch of like bad mortgages and loans. So in order to really understand what happened then and what's going to happen now, we have to look at some of the similar themes, because history it'll echo some of the stuff in the past, but it's going to have like a totally different kind of flavor in this go round. I think when I look at what's happening in today, just generally, we see a lot of the same anger, right? Mars, Pluto is going to conjunct in Aquarius. So we could definitely see it being about anger, about what is kind of going on in regards to Aquarius themes. So let's go back. There we go. So what is this anger that's exploding? Well, you're seeing a lot of people that are talking about taxes being mismanaged, billions of dollars that are potentially being lost to fraud, and things that are being exposed within certain systems, which are supposed to be seen as like humanities, like aid, okay? So whether you believe in that or not, you're gonna see a lot of this that's gonna be coming up in the news. I think a lot of it's also about like inflation being seen as a hidden tax, and online communities that are going to be very extreme. So you're gonna see a lot of polarization that's gonna be happening because of this. You're gonna see this kind of continue into the summer, I think. And you're gonna hear a lot of people who are gonna be calling on like what's going on with the IRS and investigations into the IRS, because Pluto and Mercury can be seen as bringing out information or bringing out news or shocking or damning kind of reports and numbers. And people are gonna start coming up being like, look, why are we paying taxes? And you're already seeing that. I'm not telling you guys you should or shouldn't pay your taxes. That's not my shtick, but you will hear collectively that people are calling to stop paying for taxes if they do not feel like it's actually bringing about, stability for citizens. I also think that in recent weeks, okay, we have actually heard President Trump's remarks where he's been calling the Fed a disaster. He's been saying that, we need to have somebody new in the Fed. He has also talked explicitly about there going to be a major overhaul that's going to be happening in the financial system, that the old financial system is not working, that it's dead, that we're going to be going to a new system. And the old centralized systems do kind of feel dead when you think about it. Globally, though, we are going to see that there's going to be a lot of financial volatility. So you're going to see that obviously in the year of the fire horse, things are going to be up and things are going to be down. And it's going to be like lightning. It's going to be nuts. I do think that one thing that we will see, especially as planets are kind of coming into the later bit of Aquarius season, it's going to start coming into a square with Uranus and Taurus, which Venus and Uranus are going to have mutual reception. There's a great deal of pressure that's kind of coming up on Uranus, which is now direct at the beginning of February. And this really kind of signifies that we are going to see major potential crypto adoption. Adoption in purchasing and buying online, buying in person, trade and transaction. I mean, we've heard in recent weeks that Walmart is saying that they're going to Bitcoin payments. We have heard that other major online retailers are going to allow that. The United States is talking about being able to pay your taxes in Bitcoin. And I'm not saying I'm pro or against Bitcoin, but it's very symbolic of some of the squares that are going on, helping people have more freedom when it comes to resources, and obviously navigating some of the instability with what's going on with the current, the currency. Now, we also see that there's going to be major environmental policy shocks, and I think it's going to be about energy, and I think it's going to be about fossil fuels. I also think that we're going to be hearing about major food and agriculture disruptions, and a lot of people speaking out against certain food companies, and a lot of people going to bat and really kind of championing the freedom that we can kind of see for agriculture and also like ranchers. So for example, recently, I know they passed a law that was basically saying that now ranchers or certain ranchers can bypass having to go through, I think there's only like 3 major beef processing companies in the United States. And so like all these ranchers have to go through one of them. There's a lot of delays. There's also a lot of like red tape, and it can take a lot of time to be able to process the meat and get it into market. Yet we have certain economic policies right now that's doing trade and all kinds of stuff with beef and other agriculture from other countries, which is coming in cheaper. It's getting here faster. We don't quite know what's in it. We don't know the conditions of where those animals were raised, but it's undercutting the American ranchers and the people who are out here trying to feed, United States citizens. So now they're having the opportunity and the ability to have more freedom when it comes to working together, collaborating and being able to process food, getting it from farm to table quicker, and also being able to kind of have strength in unity. So that's cool. We're going to see collective protests for equality. They're going to be extreme. They're going to be ugly. That's all I'm going to say about that. And the huge focus, I think, is going to be on decentralized governance movements. So some of the platforms that are kind of leading the charge that I have seen so far has been definitely Rumble. I mean, big hats off to Rumble. Now that they're launching crypto wallets and they're allowing people to basically use Bitcoin to tip creators. It is direct. It is like that. There's no middleman. You can share and you can kind of support certain content creators there. And like I said, also Twitter or X is saying now that they're going to be rolling out payments, expanding crypto features like tipping and potentially using certain cryptocurrencies for like peer-to-peer transactions. So that hasn't been rolled out yet. We're waiting to see what happens. But this is the kind of energy that you see. It's the power back to the people shift. So if we think back to Hamilton 1791, kind of elite central bank decentralization kind of alternatives, it's going completely against that. Now, also, Uranus is the ruler and the dispositor in all of this, right? And you can look at it from the standpoint also of Saturn, but we will see in February, right around the time that all of this is kind of building up, Saturn will actually go into Aries, which represents people having to be more sovereign, more independent, people needing to stand up and kind of push back against, certain kind of limitations. Also, Saturn and Neptune will meet around the 20th, and the dispositor is Mars in Aquarius. So it's about people kind of waking up and realizing their potential and where maybe they've been asleep at the wheel, or they've been confused, they've been lied to, or they have not seen things so clearly. But more on Uranus's connection to this. It looks like with Uranus and Taurus, it's going to be going direct right around here. So not only do we see this intense pressure, the Sun, Venus, Mercury squaring Uranus in superior square. So it's forcing Uranus to wake up and kind of quickly, collectively try to destabilize or bring about some kind of freedom when it comes to banking and resources. That's kind of a big deal. Like the solar eclipse in Aquarius is also going to square as well. So I think that there's a lot of tension that's going to be kind of coming up, and a lot of volatility in financial matters. So this could be with banks, this could be people suddenly kind of changing their values, shifting their perspective on what they're buying and what they're consuming. And then we will start to see that there will be some trines that are going to be happening down the road. When we're getting into like Gemini season, planets are going to be moving through Gemini, and they're going to start coming into a trine with Pluto. And I think that's also going to be when there's going to be some release of this energy. So it's going to be right around here when Uranus goes into Gemini, and then we see Mercury and the Sun and Uranus all coming into a trine with Pluto in Aquarius, which will be retrograde, and also some sextiles to Saturn and Neptune in Aries. So it's like whatever's about to happen in January and February is going to be, I think, huge economically for the world. February, March, and April. I think there is a sense of kind of, okay, now trying to stabilize in May. But what we will find is that these trines are going to have us talking about what has changed. It's going to have us connecting more. It's going to also really put an emphasis on media and what's changing with media and specific narratives, because we know Gemini has kind of like two perspectives. So we might actually see that there's going to be a little bit more clarity after some of these events have kind of come to fruition. Now, I think there can be harmonious breakthroughs after the fact. I also know that this energy is going to reverberate through the eclipses that we're going to be seeing in the summer. So unlike what we saw in 1787 to 1791, where it was a lot of emotional and kind of dramatic rebellions because Saturn was in Pisces, this is different. This is basically saying it's now going to ground everything in more tangible, stable resources. So you're probably going, Candace, what does this mean? In layman's terms, this means that there is going to be a lot of financial stress the next 2 months. However, this is allowing us to pivot to decentralized systems. People who are going to perhaps get into cryptocurrency, maybe they're going to learn about it, maybe they're going to be switching banks, maybe they're getting out of, feeling like they have to do traditional finance, or potentially looking at like loans and other forms of support financially that is not going through banks. So things that are going to be more peer-to-peer, or there's going to be collective groups that are going to pop up, offering you options and solutions if you do not want to be shackled to your bank for a number of years. I also feel like this is going to potentially produce some major crypto wins. Now, I'm not a financial advisor. However, we can look at the pattern that happened 2 years ago with Bitcoin up over 45%, which is unreal. Although we do know that that is a very volatile kind of like moving asset, I think it is a good indication, especially looking at Bitcoin's chart, that we're about to see a surge. Now, we can also see that there can be DeFi breakthroughs, tokenization of real assets. So things like cars, homes, right? Real estate portfolios, anything that's going to be considered a valuable, tangible asset can now be digitalized and start being put on the blockchain. We can also see that there can be widespread adoption. So kind of building on 2024 and Bitcoin and the boom, that's actually when a lot of people started being like, whoa, not messing with this stuff. Maybe I'm going into crypto. I don't want to mess with the markets, or I don't want to mess with the bond market. We also saw a lot of people that were looking for options when it comes to connecting to groups and people online that was not centralized. They did not necessarily want to feel like they were going to be canceled, or that they were going to be blacklisted or shadow banned on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube. So we did see that that's when there was more growing popularity with Rumble. And I think you're going to see more of some of these alternative kind of like media outlets that are going to become very prominent. There was huge tax reform uproars during these cycles. You will see this again. You're going to see it really start to gain momentum. Hopefully we see some policy shifts that are going to be more positive and crypto friendly, and also a little bit more tax leniency when it comes to crypto transactions. Obviously, we know, especially people who are involved in that field or in that type of investment, it can be a nightmare for dealing with taxes. And Pluto deals with taxes. So I think we're definitely going to see some incentives maybe for people who are going to be buying and selling, and also an easier way of being able to kind of keep records and kind of deal with some of those investments. Now, we will see probably some environmental or food innovations or disruptions. So you're going to see like uprooting of certain climate policies. You're going to see things where there's also going to be this move away from international groups. So I think of like the UN, I think of anything that deals with NATO, anything that's also connected with the EU, any powerful alliances that we see where there is this more forward thinking, Pluto and Aquarius. We need less people, we need less food, we need less meat, right? We need more surveillance, we need more control. People are going to start fighting back, and you will see certain nations that are going to be like, nope, we're not doing that. We're not dealing with the angry crowds. We're not dealing with people who are trying to kind of circumvent the system. And yeah, it's definitely going to be quite the watch. Now, the positive is that it may actually inspire certain people to go and help certain companies or support certain companies or buy their products. And so it can be like overnight wealth opportunities for certain companies if they are actually on the side of humanity and the side of the people. So that could be great. But definitely collective movements are a huge theme whenever we see stelliums in Aquarius. So this is going to be about people reclaiming their power through connections and really voting with their dollar. So even if you're not actually voting, it means that you're actually getting along or behind something that you believe in and putting your money towards that. So we're going to see a lot of people who are going to be supporting certain companies, certain purposes, certain organizations to bring about more freedom. Now, I want to talk to you guys about where this is happening for each and every one of the 12 rising signs, just to give you guys a better idea of like where this personal little mini revolution is going to be taking place in your life. I do talk about this briefly in the horoscopes for January, but if you guys want to get a little bit more of an in-depth in that, I recommend listening to it so that way you can see what's going on. And as a reminder, I am a Western astrologer, so I practice the Western system. I'm not Vedic, and I'm going to be looking at this under the lens of a Western kind of whole sign system. To make the most of my predictions, I recommend that you guys listen to your rising sign first to see exactly where in your life this is going to be taking place. And then you can listen to your sun sign, which will apply, as will your moon sign, but I think the most accurate that you're going to listen to is going to be your rising sign. All right, obviously, if you have any planets in Aquarius, I can't really pinpoint any one particular planet, but knowing that, you know, we're going to have some pretty early conjunctions between 0 and 5 degrees of Aquarius, this will be really potent for you because you're already going through a Pluto transit. And then you're going to see planets that are going to come into conjunction with Pluto moving through your sign. Equally, if you are a Pluto, Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury ruled chart, that's pretty much everybody. Scorpio, Aries, Leo, Taurus, Libra, Gemini, Virgo. Pretty much everyone is going to be impacted by this. It's going to be impossible to miss. But if you happen to have any planets that are really going to be around the early degrees of Aquarius, you might feel like this is going to be a little bit more prominent for you. So listen to your rising sign. All right, we're going to start first with my Aries and my Aries risings. Guys, over the next few weeks, you're going to see this massive stellium that is historical moving through your 11th house. Now, Mars is your chart ruler, so it's definitely playing a pretty key role in this. I do think that with the connections to the 11th house and the emphasis on some of the themes, really your personal little mini revolution is connected to your social networks. So that could mean your friend group, that can mean a group you're joining, a group you're starting, that could also mean it's connected to your audience. Maybe it's about your future goals. They are all coming online in a very strong fashion. Also, this is about sudden alliances. So you might find that you're getting involved with a community group. There could be some kind of online activist group you're getting involved in. Maybe you're a part of a crypto investment group, or there is some huge emphasis on tech income streams that are kind of coming up for you. Really, this is about you going through a personal period where you're breaking free from your old dreams, you're tuning into some kind of collective group vibe, and also you're reassessing and reevaluating some of your old social circles. With some of the squares to Uranus and Taurus, I think it's actually pointing more into the direction of you're really upgrading when it comes to your beliefs about your values, your money, what you want to buy, what you want to spend, what's going to be most important to you, and how you guys can achieve financial freedom. Let me know what happens, Aries. Very exciting for you guys. All right, Taurus and Taurus rising, you guys are going to be experiencing the mother of all Aquarius Stellium transits moving through your natal 10th house. Now, the pressure is on Taurus. There is just this huge emphasis in another fixed sign, which is forming a square to you and Uranus in your sign. Now, I think of recent years when you've had Saturn going through here. I think of recent years where you've also had, in 2024, a similar stellium that was in a square to Uranus in your sign. And you guys have most certainly been under pressure for sure. But the 10th house deals with your career. This is also about your public image and some kind of overhaul when it deals with your professional kind of appearance and relationships. Obviously, Venus is involved in this transit. So it's about you being out there, being seen. And I think it's about kind of accepting new authority roles. Now, roles. So it might mean that your reputation in your professional life is changing. There might be new networks or people you're connecting with. Obviously, I feel like this is kind of the precursor for the incoming solar eclipse in Aquarius. And that means that a lot of Taurus and Taurus risings are going to suddenly pivot or change jobs. They're going to start their own businesses. They're going to be kind of going into new fields. They might be doing things that deal with tech, deal with astrology, deal with science. And it's all forming squares to Uranus in your sign. So you're under pressure. It's almost like you're gearing up for what will be 2 years of just really climbing to the top of your career. And your body or your nervous system is like, I'm exhausted. I can't do anymore. So this is about working with a community, like learning how to be a boss and delegating tasks as we start to see this pressure kind of rise. Personally, I feel like I would embrace some of the changes that's happening in your career. Maybe it's going to be tied to some of the kind of topics and the themes that I mentioned. Maybe it means you're just outgrowing your old kind of job or positions in your old job. And now you're seeking some kind of group that can bring you more stability when it comes to your professional life. So you will see this unfold over the next 6 to 18 months. But now you're realizing that it takes a team to be able to kind of run your dream career. Taurus, let me know what happens. For my Geminis and Gemini risings, you guys are going to be having this massive revolutionary stellium of Aquarius planets in your 9th. Thankfully, it does involve your ruler, Mercury, and it is also going to be trining anything that you have in Gemini. So it's a little bit more friendly for the air signs. I do think that I would be watching what you'll see in later in January is there's going to be a cazimi. So you'll see Mercury pull ahead of the sun right when Aquarius season starts. I don't know exactly what it is. It'll be like the 18th, 19th, 20th, right around there. That's going to give you some kind of insight in terms of what is being reworked or what is being revolutionized in your 9th house. Now, this is a house that deals with beliefs. It's your worldview. It's about transformation, sudden insights when it comes to publishing or even travel. It is possible that the revolution is really kind of tied to how you learn, what you share, legal matters, publishing, teaching, traveling. And it's definitely good for education, especially since Mercury is going through that sign. I think a lot of you guys are going to be learning about the global economy or learning more about cycles in money and what's kind of happening internationally. I could also see a lot of you guys really focusing on spiritual studies, higher education, degrees, certification, culture, traveling to other places. So I really feel like for a lot of you guys, things are really opening up and your perspective is becoming kind of broadened and you're having more of an open mind and you're kind of aligning your intuition with the squares to Uranus in the 12th house with also some of the energy in Aquarius, which is implementing maybe divination, astrology, forecasting, and taking a little bit of the logic and also the spirit and merging it together. Good luck, Gemini. That's an interesting one for you guys. Very fun. For my Cancer and Cancer risings, you guys will be experiencing this massive stellium in Aquarius that is totally revolutionizing your natal 8th house in a sign that in conjuncts and quincunxes you. Now, even though you weren't named as one of the people who's going to be most impacted specifically during the stellium, I would be watching when we get into the solar eclipse, where the sun and the moon, your ruler, come into conjunction in this same area of your chart. So you're going to be seeing it, but there is this buildup that's happening until you get to that point right around mid-February. Now, Cancer, the 8th house is all about deep change. So it can mean that it's deep change when it comes to your shared resources. There can be a major focus on intimacy and healing trauma, being vulnerable, but it can also be very strong for investments. It can deal with debt, psychological rebirth, and also the money that you get from other people. So topics like taxes, loans, debt, anything connected to insurance or your kind of investments you have with a partner, and money that's owed to you is certainly going to be getting highlighted. And I definitely feel like Cancer and Cancer risings are going to see some really interesting financial things that are going to be happening this year, because it's kind of balancing out, what is mine and like what I have versus what I'm owed. So you're going to see a lot of things that are going to be shifting, I think, revolving around your financial and your psychological security. I do think that this is a period that definitely talks about high rewards, but you have to manage volatility, whether that's psychologically or financially. And a lot of you guys are going to be seeing that there is the potential or opportunity for a lot of money to come in, but that's only because you're merging or you're collaborating with another person. Good luck, Cancer. That's definitely going to be quite the stellium for you guys. All right, Leo and Leo rising, you are seeing all of this Aquarius energy moving through your 7th house of relationships, obviously in your opposite sign. And with the sun being involved in this stellium, you are definitely part of the change and the transformation in how you connect to other people. Truth be told, the next month or so is definitely a very make or break energy for a lot of Leo and Leo risings who are in relationships. And remember that the 7th house isn't necessarily you. It can be kind of like a reflection of you through other people. It can represent your spouses, your committed relationships, business partners, relationship with an astrologer, a therapist. And the sun is going through there. So your relationship to people and the changes they're going through is pretty prominent. So you're seeing this under the lens of just your interaction with them. If you're single, it can definitely be a pretty dramatic turning point where there is this huge transformation and you're kind of embracing and approaching relationships very differently. But those of you guys who are partnered are definitely going to be feeling the heat. Especially if you have anything Leo about 0 to 5 degrees, that's really where you're going to feel it. Then you'll see it again if you have anything 27, 28, 29 under the February solar eclipse opposite your sign. Now, I'm predicting there's going to be major partnership revolution. There's opportunity for new contracts, new relationships and relationship renewal, and potential business alliances as well. So I'm thinking there could be collaborations professionally, launching businesses with a partner, or maybe you're getting into a whole new field altogether. But one thing I can tell you is that the power flips when you're working with other people, like powerful and connected people can come into your life. Over the next several years, you can see that you're either meeting famous people, you're with wealthy people, you connect with people who are just very well known. And that's just because of the North Node and Pluto that's going to be going through your 7th. Now, I'm really focusing on the fact that all of this is going to be squaring Uranus. So you're going to want to watch around the time of the solar eclipse in mid-February when the sun and the moon come in together, make the solar eclipse, resetting relationships, and it's squaring Uranus in the 10th. Now, personally, I have felt like this is pushing a lot of you guys to either seek, new audiences, new partnerships. I've also seen it be that there's pressure in relationships going on because of a home or a living situation dilemma, or where work kind of pressure and relationship pressure are kind of coming together and you feel like something has to give. The 10th house, believe it or not, deals with the home of your partner. So it almost seems like a lot of Leo and Leo risings are going to be like, okay, are we moving? Are you moving in? Are you moving out? Or they're going through a lot of stress in regards to their family. And that seems to kind of impact your relationships. So watch for this really transformative period, especially think back to what happened in 2024, what cycles kind of came about, because likely they're going to repeat themselves. And for my Virgos and Virgo risings, you guys are going to see this really powerful revolutionary stellium in Aquarius moving through your 6th house. Now, this is a house that's kind of personal to you. You guys vibe with the 6th house energies. And truth be told, like even though it in conjunction or quincunxes you, it may not feel as extreme or heavy as some of the other signs. Usually if you're having this in the 6th or the 12th house, it's like it's not hitting you kind of directly, but you definitely see whatever is brewing. So the 6th house is a house that deals with your work. So this could mean your office space, it could mean your schedule, it could mean your coworkers, quite literally your job. It can also be tied to anything revolving around your health, your habits, your pets, and yeah, just how you take care of yourself, your day-to-day routines. What I would be watching for, because Mercury is going to cazimi with the sun in February, and in January, and then you're also going to be seeing like these solar eclipses. It is really kind of highlighting that there is a need to have a real power up when it comes to this area of your life. So I think you're going to revolutionize your routines. Some of you guys may find that this is about getting back to the gym, incorporating tech or anything that deals with apps or gadgets to monitor your health, to monitor what you're eating, maybe your steps, and potentially even like modernize or kind of upgrade something in your workspace. And so it can be that you're working in kind of like open air environments with a lot of people. You don't have like private desks. Everybody's working together communally. Maybe you're going and really focusing on your nervous system health, because Aquarius can deal with the nervous system. It also deals with like the ankles. So watch out for anything that deals with like kind of foot and ankle related health issues, and tummy troubles can come through the 6th house also. But I think some of you guys are going to be really embracing some new health and lifestyle kind of habits, so that way you can navigate better some of the pressure that's kind of going on at work. Now, as you guys know, this will be squaring Uranus in your 9th house. So it also kind of talks about needing to make time or altering or changing your schedule. If you have to travel, if you have to take courses, if you're trying to graduate, if you're trying to learn something new, this is really about streamlining your life with updates, and where there can be really a lot of help when it comes to your health and your habits, if there is group involvement and like friendship accountability. So being like, hey, we're going on a trip over the summer, you know, you and your best friend are like, we're committed, we're going to the gym 3 times a week, so we're looking killer in that bathing suit, that kind of stuff. Could also mean that you're just learning a lot more about health and habits, and you're really feeling inspired to do a detox, do a cleanse, do a purge, and you're really following some new kind of like health or lifestyle belief. Good luck, Virgo. For my Libras and Libra risings, you guys are going to be seeing a revolutionary kind of stellium of planets going through Aquarius in your natal 5th house, fellow sister air sign. And if you happen to have anything like 0 to about 5 degrees of Libra or Libra rising, or 27, 28, 29 degrees of Libra or Libra rising, you're going to be impacted from these transits, either because of the trines from these conjunctions to Pluto or the solar eclipse later in February. Libra, this is happening with your chart ruler. Venus is moving through this part of your sky, so it definitely does touch on your involvement, right? Your touch, your need to balance, maybe anything revolving around art or relationships. And the 5th house is known for creativity. This is about romance. Also, joy feeling reignited. I think a lot of Libra and Libra risings are going to be taking some really bold risks when it comes to art, when it comes to creativity, maybe when it comes to self-employment, potentially even when it comes to investing, and anything that deals with trading or like crypto, because it could be, you know, speculative in the 5th house. And then this is going to be dealing specifically with Uranus, which we're going to see these planets squaring in your natal 8th house. Now, I see this as a lot of like just having fun and being like, well, I'm willing to take risks. You know, I'll invest a little bit here, I'll invest a little bit there, and see kind of what takes off. But it also means that this is kind of a breakthrough that you're having in the heart space, focusing on closeness, having more emotional security and vulnerability and intimacy with partners. It can also talk about some radical transformations to your hobbies, as well as a huge emphasis on children. So if you have kids, you're going to be focusing on your kids. There's a lot changing there. If you don't have children, it can be a time where you're thinking about that. And then if you are single, dating is definitely on the horizon. It just looks like it's a lot of getting outside of your comfort zone and being willing to kind of put yourself out there. Very good for digital products too, or self-employment. So if you're a Libra who's thinking about getting involved in those things, I definitely feel like that's going to be setting the stage for that for the next several months. Good luck. Scorpio risings. Particularly if you have anything 0 to 5 degrees, or if you have anything that's going to be like 27 to 29 degrees of Scorpio, sun, moon, or rising, you will be impacted by this pretty directly, either through the Pluto squares or through the solar eclipse squares. Man, I got a lot of Scorpio risings in my life, a lot of them in my family, and it's all kind of like the same stuff happening all at once. I mean, I think what I would be watching if I were a Scorpio is I would be watching pretty much the end of January into February. I'd be watching every single planet that comes into conjunction with Pluto, because that means that you are being visited by certain energies that are pushing you to kind of revolutionize and radically change the way that you look at the foundation of your life. Whether that's how you relate to your family, the house that you're living in, how you're dealing with your roommates, where you want to move, if you want to renovate, and dealing with obviously some heavier energies, because Pluto and Mars are malefics. Even though they're your chart rulers, they're malefic. So them swinging through the 4th house is going to represent you having to channel more of this futuristic, direct, kind of abstract energy, and it's squaring you. So it means that Scorpios can't be approaching things being so super emotionally rigid, okay? And like, I'm a Scorpio, so easier said than done. But I do feel like the goodness that's going to be coming from this transit is the fact that it's setting you up for February solar eclipse. And it's saying to you, look, change is coming one way or another. It's about how you're approaching this change. And I would read this very similarly to like the Tower card, where what a lot of Scorpios were hoping to achieve when it comes to their home or their family or their living situation or family relationships is now being dismantled. And yes, there can be a lot of drama that can go on the home front. Yes, some of you guys may feel like there are some really kind of heart-wrenching things going on with your family. So obviously I touch wood as I say that. But all of this energy is coming together in preparation for the solar eclipse, where then you're going to hit restart and you're going to think about new ways of looking at family. And Aquarius in the 4th house is like, okay, there's the family you're born into, Scorpio, then there's the family that you make. So it may be your friends, it may be your roommates, it might be your allies. And all of this is coming into a square with Uranus and Taurus in your 7th house, which means that a lot of like this emotional purging that's happening, or a lot of this sudden dramatic change that's happening for you on the home front or involving your family or emotions, is putting a great deal of pressure on your partnerships and your relationships. So Uranus can represent the tension that's going on the home front, and that it's actually creating a lot of relational problems. If you're married, it's causing issue with spouses. If you are in committed partnerships, it might mean that it's incentivizing you to pick up and move to a new area where you can meet someone new. It can also mean that it's really pushing you to work with an astrologer or a therapist, or anything that's kind of connected to people who can help you kind of understand and help kind of, guide you in some of these more kind of emotional, turbulent times. I do think that you will see your roots in your family transform. So this is only the beginning of that. And this is really deeply connected to ancestral healing. I think it's really about securing your bases. And so when I think about like the Mars and Pluto stuff, a lot of you guys are going to be kind of approaching either the way that you look at home building, family building, or relationships in a very, very different way. And a lot of Scorpio and Scorpio risings are going to be really called to create communal spaces, or be moving in with family, or having generational kind of like bridging where you're living with like multiple groups, or you have multiple properties potentially on one location. And some of you guys will actually see that over the next 2 years. Let me know what happens, Scorpio. That's going to be an interesting one for you. For my Sag and Sag risings, you guys are going to see this massive revolutionary energy of Aquarius moving through your 3rd house. Pretty friendly for you. It does sextile you by sign, so I don't really see too much conflict for you guys. But what I will tell you is that, this is still a very big energy nevertheless. So pay attention. The 3rd house deals with communication and ideas, and likely they are exploding. It can mean that there is a huge emphasis in just finding your voice, and something you're writing, blogging, talking about, learning is coming online. There is some kind of reset maybe in a relationship that you have with a sibling, or maybe with a relative, potentially even a neighbor. So keep an eye on some of the neighbor dramas. I also feel like this can be a time where, because of the connection with Uranus and how it's squaring Uranus, that it's teaching you where if you're getting too like riled up with communication, it can actually bring some issues with your health, or potentially even with your coworkers. And it can also show you some of the conflict that can kind of come up health-wise from not speaking up, not sharing your ideas, not speaking your voice, and also not learning new ways of communicating or getting involved in like new online kind of communication or media platforms. So I think this is a wonderful time for my Sag and Sag risings, first and foremost, to be driving safely, okay? The third house is movement, and then Uranus in the sixth house deals with the potential for accidents or issues or things that are kind of getting burnt out. Especially if you guys have like electric vehicles or if you have older vehicles, that's something I'd really want to watch for because you can see some electrical issues. You can also see some issues just from like, you know, getting from point A to point B. I would say for a lot of you guys, this is also about learning something new and finding the passion and creating time to like in your schedule to dedicate to that. So some of you guys might go, I'm going to be starting an online website business. I'm going to be, you know, writing a blog. I'm now going to be using a new app or building an app or building an online forum. And also bringing in newer technology to help you with your health and also help you with time management. So it might mean that you need new softwares, you need a phone update, maybe you're gonna need a new computer for work, right? All of that stuff can kind of come online for you guys as well. But ultimately, what this is really calling you to do is really focus on finding your voice. And I think in many ways, speaking your truth, which I know you guys are really good at doing, but you're gonna be really, I think, full steam ahead with just the communications and the ideas. Just please be mindful of how you guys are moving through the world. Stay off your phones when you're driving and be mindful of your words because they carry a lot of power. And when you shift something about your frame of mind, how you're speaking to yourself, how you're talking to other people, what you're thinking about, this is going to have major, major, major impacts on not just your health, but also your productivity. And it's going to help you actually kind of get through your day-to-day, I think, a lot more, a lot better and be a lot more, what's the word I'm looking for? Just being able to get more stuff done. I mean, in an efficient manner. I think that's really what this is. It's pushing you to be more efficient at work and to kind of upend some of your old like ways of working. So good luck to my Sag and Sag risings. Capricorn and Capricorn rising, you guys are seeing this massive revolutionary energy of the stellium in Aquarius moving through your natal second house. Obviously not directly impacting you, maybe a little different once we start to see Saturn going into Aries. Maybe that'll influence the energy a little bit more. You might see a bit of a delay here. But my goodness, Capricorns, this is sitting in your second house, which deals all with your money. This is also directly connected to your values. Something radically changing and transforming. Something is being seeded here in this next month to help you come into, I think, generational wealth, to also help you come into a period where you're revolutionizing the way that you look at money, what you're spending, what you're buying, what kind of currencies you're involved in. I think there is about to be a major financial reset for you, Capricorn. Now, this means that there can be new income that can be coming in. It may mean that you're really focusing on spending money to make money because sometimes when planets go through the second house like this, we have to buy, spend, invest. We have to start businesses. We also have to believe in ourselves. Now, it's going to be squaring Uranus in your fifth house, which might mean that there's just a lot of money that's being thrown at fifth house things. Having kids, having self-employment, dating, having fun, hobbies, all of those things. And this is a superior square. So it's saying that you have major goals to revolutionize your financial situation, to bring in more money. Certainly for the next 2 years, you guys are going to have to work hard for it with the North Node going through your second. But there will be gains. But those gains only come if you're willing to take risks. Now, some of you guys will dip your toes into, trading and speculative stuff, maybe gambling, betting. It could also mean that you're getting involved in crypto. But it's also saying to you that this is about getting creative and finding new ways to enjoy the way that you're making money and really tapping into your natural talents. And so for some Capricorn and Capricorn risings, Uranus and Taurus could be things like you're working with flowers, you're working with astrology, you're working with crystals, you're working with aromatherapy, you're doing massage. Maybe it means that you're getting more involved in anything that deals with jewelry or something that you create, cooking, right? Gardening. And that's going to make you feel wealthy in a sense of going, wow, a lot of the things that I need, I can grow myself, or I can make myself, or these things that I love that are so beautiful, now I can sell to other people.
I have a really good friend who's a Capricorn rising who's going through these transits, and she was telling me that now she's working with her new spouse, and she's like making cakes, and she's putting together floral arrangements, and she's selling all kinds of packages, you know, for weddings and people who are eloping. And I was like, how cool is that you see the sextile between your 7th house of like marriage and spouses, and you're building all of these beautiful things so that way you can have some, you know, kind of like spontaneous weddings for people and provide like this package. I've also seen other people who are getting really into cooking, and they're starting like their own food companies, and they're starting to sell stuff that's like packaged and things that are going to be more like nutritionally dense. So a lot of it depends on your personal astrology, but I think you're redefining what your financial security means to you. And this is about finding freedom, I think, through independence and how you make money, and not really feeling like you have to rely on other people or old jobs in the process. Good luck, Capricorn. I'm excited to see what happens for you guys. That's a cool one. For Aquarius and Aquarius rising, obviously everybody's kind of waiting to hear, your prediction. I just think that the next 6 weeks of your life is going to be life-changing. I think that it's only the beginning of a bigger kind of culmination of changes that will be transpiring over the next 2 years. So you will look back in several years' time, and you will probably go, that's when the change happened. It may be mirroring some of the things that you saw in 2024. And if you were rigid or digging in your heels or reluctant or unwilling to make some of those changes back then, it's coming back up again. Now, this time there is a real push because it's really encouraging you or incentivizing you to finally deal with some of these squares to Uranus, which is your modern day ruler. Obviously, the first house is the self, body, identity, your appearance, how you carry yourself. It's about this personal identity reinvention that you're going through. This is about you leading the charge. So I'm going to tell you the other 11 zodiac signs are looking at you, Aquarius, and they're going, what are you going to do? You're the first in line of the revolutionary signs that are going to lead the changes in 2026. First, it's Aquarius because you've had the Pluto transit and you have this eclipse. Then it's going to be Aries, which is going to be happening in February when we see Saturn and Neptune go into their sign. And because of the collective change that you bring about for the communities, individuals, Aries, are going to wake up. Then when we get into April, we pass the torch to Gemini, who is going to help create new systems, communicate, connect individuals so we can have this change. Those 3 signs are going to be pivotal rising signs in 2026. You are basically striking the match that's going to ignite this whole process. So Aquarius, this is about you really looking different, taking on a new direction. It's going to possibly be about a new public role. Obviously, Pluto deals specifically with your career, your reputation, your recognition. Some of you guys feel like you're burying old versions of yourself, or you're giving up old career directions, you're giving up old goals because you're really embracing something that is going to be more authentic. It's also different. It's about flying your freak flag and being you. Now, this is going to also be very strong for those of you guys who have 0 to about 5 degrees of Aquarius, or 27, 28, 29 degrees of Aquarius, as you'll get hit by the eclipse later in February. Keep in mind that you are supposed to be pushing some of your old outdated values or old ways of living, emotionally responding, or where you have been kind of hunkering down. So it may actually push over the next couple of months a big change for you emotionally, a big move. It could also mean that it is liberating you from feeling like you haven't known where you're going to live or where you're going to stay. Later in the year, it's going to play very nicely when Uranus is trining all of this, because what does it mean? You're going to have more fun. A lot of you guys are going to fall in love. You're going to start businesses. You're going to feel more creative. Also, a lot of you guys are going to be heavily focused on, something that's connected to children or like romantic partners. So really the pressure is just the next couple of months, and then it starts to subside as we're getting into late spring, going into summer. I really encourage you guys to be open to this new personal identity, this new change. And obviously in the first house, it's how you're transmuting all of this power, because Mars and Pluto can make you like seething in a way, or kind of like chomping at the bit, and you can feel kind of like irritated, or you're kind of combative. And I would say, don't resist, embrace. This is about you embracing what's going on and finally uprooting some of these emotional things that have felt like very unstable or even like stagnant for the last couple of years. would love to hear from you guys to see how this materializes, because it's going to be really cool to watch you go through this. And we've got Pisces and Pisces risings. So, you know, my Pisces and my Virgos are not going to be hit as directly with some of these energies, but nevertheless, it's something really important to watch. I always giggle when I see stuff like this going through Aquarius for Pisces, because it's almost like you guys are the ones that's sitting in front of the TV with your cup of coffee, like being like, wow, the world's just nuts. And you're just like watching it happen, but it's not impacting you directly, but still, you guys are really empathic. You guys absorb things. So your perspective with this really intense stellium of planets going through the 12th house is going to be you watching kind of like the world burn, you know? You're going to be like, this is just nuts. But with that being said, you guys have to kind of protect your auric field, because you can kind of get hit with some of the energies unexpectedly that can make you totally wiped out. The 12th house is about this subconscious and spiritual revolution. So the revolution is loud, but it's a lot quieter for my Pisces risings, because I think a lot of you guys have been going through this where you've been kind of preparing in recent years, having had the North Node, Saturn, and Neptune in your sign. Now, with that being said, there's still a ton of planets in a house that deals with hidden enemies. It deals with hospitals, hidden places, foreigners, churches, temples, anything that is going to be more kind of hidden or spiritual. Your bedroom, your sleep, your meditative state. Now, this is very much influenced by Uranus, and if you see, it's squaring Uranus in the 3rd house. So I think a lot of my Aquarius and Aquarius risings are going to find that there's a lot of hidden truths that are kind of emerging. It may mean that you start, getting into divination or working with tarot or a pendulum, something you can hold in your hand because Uranus is in your 3rd, to confirm some of your intuitions, your guts, or your dreams, like your feelings. And it's also possible that this is an area of your chart where there's a lot of like dealing with repressed anger or frustration or fears about what's about to change. Obviously, your chart ruler, your co-ruler, Neptune, has just moved into Aries, and then, Saturn is going to be there as well, conjuncting Neptune. So it means a lot of Pisces and Pisces risings are going, what's happening in the world, and like, how is that going to impact my security? And so I would say we can't carry into this poverty mindset, lack mindset, fear of what's going to happen, because we can't really change what's inevitable. There are things that are going to change. But also your thoughts create your reality. And I think that a lot with the squares between the 12th and the 3rd house. If you're meditating, praying, visualizing, vision boarding, speaking things into fruition, you can navigate the square a little bit better. I do think that this can bring some healing that can kind of come up through resting or doing some breath work or even working with grounding exercises before you go to bed. Watch for behind the scene power plays that can be taking place. And I think a lot of it's going to be about where you're kind of psyching yourself out and you're not having necessary conversations and confronting other people. This could be siblings, this could be friends, this could be neighbors. And it's definitely highlighting where there's some stuff that's maybe kind of creeping into your subconscious that's definitely making you feel a little ungrounded. So I would advise a lot of Pisces and Pisces risings to like listen to binaural beats before they go to bed, do breath work or meditation. Sound bowl meditations can be really good. This can also be great for you guys to get into a regular meditation routine, quieting the mind, calming down the nervous system. So that way you can really receive some of the messages that are going to be coming up for you in kind of an altered state, like when you're dreaming or when you're meditating. But I do think that this is not going to be as loud as some of the other kind of transits. Perhaps there's more integration of whatever goes on in a more physical way, February, March, when you're seeing eclipses and also a retrograde in your sign. So hopefully that's helpful, Pisces. Definitely give it a little bit of time to see this kind of play out, because you're definitely going to see from the time that you guys are watching this video towards the end of January into February, that's when these things are going to start to kind of get seated. I'm excited to see what this rare stellium brings. Obviously, the preview in 2024, I think personally it was very obvious what it was about. But now connecting it back to all the other time periods, I'm realizing that this is the revolution that is going to basically lead to a major personal wake up for everyone. Hopefully power shifting, back to the people. I think it's going to be great to see a lot of things that become decentralized. Remember to ground yourself out. Be mindful also of the volatility that's going to go on with the markets, because it's going to be all over the place. Ride some of the squares for excitement, and we'll use some of the trines in Gemini season for the gains. Just release old financial fears, because I think that with the eclipse and these transits in February, it is promising all of us freedom. Drop your rising sign below. I'd love to hear from you guys. Let me know what's happening in your chart, maybe what happened for you in 2024 and what you're gearing up for in 2026. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. It helps the channel grow. Give me a thumbs up if you like this, and if you want to see more about me and my work, or you want to join my up and coming end of January Astro 301 courses live and learn mastering astrology techniques, head over to my website at beyondtheveiltarot.com. We've got a few spaces left if you guys want to learn all of my techniques in astrology. I'd love to see you guys there. And I hope you guys enjoy this powerful, powerful energy in January and February. I'll see you guys back here soon. Take care.